The night shift at Riverside Mall had always been quiet, almost too quiet. Marcus Williams had been working as a security guard there for 3 years, and he thought he had seen everything. But on that cold November evening, everything he believed about following orders would be tested in ways he never imagined. Before we dive into Marcus's incredible story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon so you never miss these amazing real-life stories that will touch your heart and restore your faith in humanity. Marcus was 52 years old, a former police officer who had retired early after a knee injury. The security job was supposed to be easy, just walking around the empty mall after closing time, checking doors and making sure everything was locked up tight. His supervisor, Mr. Henderson, was a strict man who believed in following procedures to the letter. There was a rule for everything, and breaking those rules meant losing your job. That Tuesday started like any other. Marcus arrived at the mall at 9 in the evening, just as the last shoppers were leaving. He grabbed his flashlight, checked his radio, and began his rounds. The mall felt different at night. The bright lights were dimmed, the cheerful music was turned off, and the empty corridors echoed with every footstep. Most people would find it creepy, but Marcus had grown used to it. He actually enjoyed the peace and quiet around midnight. Marcus was completing his second round of the building when his radio crackled to life. It was Mr. Henderson, calling from the security office where he monitored all the cameras. "Williams, we have a situation near the west entrance." Henderson's voice was sharp and commanding. "There's a woman sitting outside the doors. She's been there for about 20 minutes. Marcus adjusted his radio. "Should I go check on her, sir?" "No," Henderson replied firmly. "Corporate policy is clear. Once the mall is closed, anyone outside is not our responsibility. We are not to engage with people loitering on the property. Just monitor the situation and make sure she doesn't try to break in." Marcus frowned. He had heard this speech before. The mall management was paranoid about liability issues. They didn't want guards helping people outside because if something went wrong, the mall could be sued. It was all about protecting the business, not the people. "Understood, sir," Marcus said. Though something in his gut told him this wasn't right, he walked toward the west entrance anyway. Staying inside but close enough to see through the glass doors, the woman was there, just as Henderson had described. She was young, probably in her late 20s, with dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She was sitting on the cold concrete, her back against the brick wall, and she was crying. Not just regular crying, but the kind of desperate sobbing that shakes a person's whole body. Marcus stood there, watching through the glass. The temperature had dropped below freezing that night, and he could see the woman's breath forming clouds in the air. She wasn't wearing a coat, just a thin sweater that offered no protection against the bitter cold. Her hands were wrapped around her knees, trying to keep warm. Every instinct Marcus had as a former police officer told him to open those doors and help her. But Henderson's orders echoed in his mind. "Do nothing. Just monitor. Don't engage." He watched for another 5 minutes. The woman kept crying, occasionally looking at her phone and then putting it down like she was waiting for a call that never came. She was shivering now, her whole body trembling from the cold. Marcus picked up his radio. "Mr. Henderson, the woman outside looks like she's in distress. It's freezing out there, and she's not dressed for this weather. Maybe we should call someone?" Henderson's response came quickly. "Williams, I told you to do nothing. We are not social workers. We are not the police. Our job is to protect mall property. Period. If she's in trouble, she can call 911 herself. Do not open those doors. Do not engage. Is that clear?" "Yes, sir," Marcus said quietly. But as he stood there, something happened that changed everything. The woman let out a cry that was different from her sobbing. It was a cry of pain, sharp and sudden. She doubled over, clutching her stomach, and Marcus saw something that made his blood run cold. There was blood on her sweater, spreading slowly across the fabric. His heart began to race. This wasn't just someone having a bad night. This woman was hurt, possibly seriously hurt, and she was alone in freezing temperatures with no help in sight. Marcus grabbed his radio again. "Sir, she's bleeding. I think she's injured. We need to do something." Henderson's voice came back, even more stern than before. "Williams, I'm going to say this one more time. Do nothing. We have our orders from corporate. If you open those doors, if you step outside, if you engage with her in any way, you will be terminated immediately. Is that understood? Marcus stood frozen, torn between his orders and his conscience. His job meant everything to him. After leaving the police force, he had struggled to find work. This security position paid his bills, helped him take care of his elderly mother, and gave him purpose. Losing it would be devastating. But as he watched the woman collapse fully onto the concrete, still crying out in pain, Marcus realized that some things were more important than a job. Some moments define who you are as a person. And this was one of those moments. He looked at his badge, then at the woman through the glass. His hand moved to the door handle. The choice he was about to make would change everything. Marcus pushed open the west entrance door, and the freezing November air hit him immediately. His radio crackled with Henderson's angry voice, but he turned the volume down and rushed toward the woman on the ground. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Marcus knelt beside her, his knees protesting against the cold concrete. Up close, he could see she was even younger than he first thought, maybe 25 at most. Her face was pale, almost gray, and her lips had a bluish tint from the cold. The woman's eyes fluttered open. They were filled with fear and pain. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Please help me. He's going to find me." Marcus felt his training kick in. He quickly assessed the situation. The blood on her sweater was coming from her side, and it looked like a stab wound. This wasn't an accident. Someone had hurt her deliberately. "Who's going to find you?" Marcus asked gently, while pulling off his security jacket and wrapping it around her shoulders. "Who did this to you?" "My boyfriend," she managed to say between chattering teeth. "Ex-boyfriend, Jake. He went crazy when I tried to leave. He had a knife. I ran, but he's looking for me. I saw his car driving around. That's why I'm hiding here." Marcus's radio was going crazy now. Henderson was shouting orders, threatening termination, demanding that Marcus get back inside immediately. But Marcus had made his choice. There was no going back now. "What's your name?" he asked the woman, taking out his personal cell phone. Sarah Mitchell." "Okay, Sarah, I'm Marcus, and I'm going to help you. I'm calling an ambulance right now." He dialed 911 while keeping his eyes on the parking lot. Watching for any sign of danger, the emergency operator answered quickly. Marcus explained the situation, gave their exact location, and described Sarah's injuries. The operator told him an ambulance was on the way and advised him to keep Sarah warm and conscious. "They're coming," Marcus told Sarah, pressing his hand gently against her wound to try to slow the bleeding. "Just stay with me, okay? Keep talking to me. Tell me about yourself." Sarah's eyes were starting to close. "I'm so tired," she whispered. No, stay awake," Marcus said urgently. "Come on, Sarah, tell me something. Do you have family? Someone we should call?" "My mom," Sarah said weakly. "But she lives in Ohio. I moved here 6 months ago for a job. That's when I met Jake. He seemed so nice at first." Her voice cracked. "How did I not see what he really was?" Marcus had heard this story too many times during his years as a police officer. Good people getting trapped in bad relationships, unable to see the danger until it was too late. "It's not your fault," Marcus said firmly. "None of this is your fault. You were brave enough to leave, and that takes incredible strength." Behind him, Marcus heard the mall door open. He turned to see Mr. Henderson marching toward them, his face red with anger.
"Oh, Williams.
I ordered you to stay inside. You've just thrown away your career for a stranger?" Marcus didn't stand up. He kept pressure on Sarah's wound and looked up at his supervisor calmly. "Then I guess I've thrown away my career, because I'm not leaving her." Henderson stopped a few feet away, his hands clenched into fists. "You realize corporate will hear about this? You violated direct orders. You engaged with someone off property. You've opened the mall up to liability. A woman is bleeding and freezing to death," Marcus said, his voice steady. "I don't care about liability right now," Henderson started to respond, but then he really looked at Sarah for the first time. He saw the blood, the pale face, the terrified eyes. Something in his expression changed. The anger faded, replaced by uncertainty. How bad is she hurt? Henderson asked quietly. Bad enough that she'd be dead if I'd followed your orders to do nothing, Marcus replied. Before Henderson could respond, headlights swept across the parking lot. But it wasn't an ambulance. It was a dark blue sedan, driving slowly through the rows of parked cars. The car stopped about 50 yards away, and Marcus felt Sarah tense up beside him. That's him, she whispered, terror filling her voice. That's Jake's car. Marcus's heart began to pound. The car door opened, and a man got out. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a dark hoodie. Even from this distance, Marcus could sense the anger radiating from him. The man started walking toward them with purposeful strides. Henderson, get inside and lock the doors, Marcus said urgently. Call the police right now and tell them we have an active threat. For once, Henderson didn't argue. He ran back to the mall entrance, fumbling with his keys. Marcus positioned himself between Sarah and the approaching man. He had no weapon, no backup, and a bad knee that wouldn't let him run if things got ugly. But he had spent 25 years protecting people. That instinct didn't just disappear because he wore a different uniform now. Jake was closer now, close enough that Marcus could see his face. The man's eyes were wild, unfocused. His hands were shoved deep in his hoodie pocket, and Marcus had no doubt one of those hands was holding a knife. Get away from her, Jake shouted. She's coming with me. Marcus stood his ground. She's not going anywhere with you. The police are on their way. Jake laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. I don't care about the police. Sarah is mine. She doesn't get to just walk away. She's not yours, Marcus said firmly. She's a human being with the right to choose her own life. And she's chosen to leave you. You need to respect that and walk away. You don't understand, Jake said, pulling his hand from his pocket. As Marcus suspected, there was a knife, the blade still stained with Sarah's blood. I love her. We belong together. I can't let her leave. Marcus kept his eyes on the knife. That's not love. Love doesn't hurt people. Love doesn't trap them. What you're feeling is possession, control, and that's not the same thing. Jake took another step forward. Move aside, old man. This doesn't concern you. Making it concern me, Marcus said, standing firm. In the distance, sirens finally began to wail, growing louder with each passing second. Jake heard them too. His expression changed from anger to panic. He looked at Sarah, then at Marcus, then at the approaching police lights now visible on the main road. What happened next would determine whether everyone made it through this night alive. Jake's face twisted with rage and desperation as the police sirens grew louder. He gripped the knife tighter, his knuckles turning white. Marcus could see the man calculating his options, weighing whether he had time to hurt them both before the police arrived. It's over. Jake, Marcus said, trying to keep his voice calm despite his racing heart. You can still walk away from this. Drop the knife and leave. Don't make this worse than it already is. Worse? Jake's laugh was manic. She's already ruined my life. I gave her everything and she just threw it away like garbage. I'm not letting her destroy me. Behind Marcus, Sarah was crying softly. Jake, please, she said weakly. I never meant to hurt you. I just couldn't stay anymore. You were scaring me? Scaring you? Jake's voice cracked. I was loving you. Everything I did was because I loved you so much. But you couldn't see that, could you? You had to make me the bad guy. Marcus had seen this pattern before during his police career. Abusers who genuinely believed their violence was justified, that their control was actually love. They twisted reality until they saw themselves as victims instead of perpetrators. The police cars turned into the mall parking lot, their lights painting everything in flashes of red and blue. Jake saw them and made his decision. Instead of running, he lunged forward, trying to get past Marcus to reach Sarah. Marcus didn't think. Years of training took over. Despite his bad knee, he moved to intercept Jake, catching the younger man's arm as he thrust the knife forward. They collided hard, both men crashing to the ground. The knife clattered across the concrete, skittering away from both of them. Jake scrambled to reach it, but Marcus grabbed his leg, holding him back. Pain shot through Marcus's knee as they struggled, but he refused to let go. All he had to do was hold on for a few more seconds until the police arrived. Jake twisted around and threw a wild punch that connected with Marcus's jaw. Stars exploded in his vision, but Marcus maintained his grip. He had spent 25 years dealing with people far more dangerous than this. He wasn't about to let this young man hurt anyone else tonight. The police cars screeched to a halt just yards away. Car doors flew open, and officers rushed toward them with weapons drawn. "Police, let me see your hands." Jake finally stopped fighting. He went limp on the ground, and Marcus rolled away, breathing hard. Two officers immediately moved to handcuff Jake, while another kicked the knife farther away from everyone. A female officer rushed to Sarah, kneeling beside her and calling for the paramedics. An ambulance pulled up seconds later, its headlights illuminating the scene. Everything became a blur of activity as EMTs surrounded Sarah. Checking her vitals and preparing to transport her, another officer helped Marcus to his feet. "You okay, sir?" Marcus nodded, though his jaw throbbed and his knee was screaming in protest. "I'm fine. Just make sure she gets to the hospital." "Already happening," the officer assured him. "We're going to need a statement from you about what happened here." Marcus watched as they loaded Sarah into the ambulance. Before they closed the doors, she looked at him and mouthed two words, "Thank you." Then she was gone. The ambulance speeding away with its sirens wailing. Jake was being searched and placed in the back of a police car. He was shouting something about his rights, about how Sarah had provoked him, how none of this was his fault. The officers ignored his ranting and shut the car door, muffling his voice. Mr. Henderson emerged from the mall, pale and shaken. He walked over to where Marcus stood, giving his statement to the police. "Is she going to be okay?" Henderson asked quietly. "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "She lost a lot of blood." Henderson was silent for a moment. Then he said something Marcus never expected to hear. "You did the right thing, Williams. I was wrong to tell you to do nothing." Marcus looked at his supervisor in surprise. Henderson continued, "I've been following corporate policy for so long. I forgot that there are things more important than rules. That woman would have died if you'd listened to me. I'm going to have to report what happened tonight, but I'm going to tell them the truth. You saved a life by breaking the rules, and any company that would punish you for that isn't worth working for." Before Marcus could respond, another car pulled up. It was a detective, arriving to take over the investigation. Marcus spent the next hour going over every detail, explaining how he found Sarah, how Jake had shown up with the knife, and how everything had unfolded by the time the police finished with him. It was nearly 3 in the morning. The parking lot was finally quiet again, though yellow crime scene tape now marked where the confrontation had occurred. Marcus sat on the curb, his body aching and his mind exhausted. Henderson sat down beside him. "You should go home. I'll handle the rest of the shift." "What about my job?" Marcus asked. "Corporate is going to fire me for disobeying orders." Henderson shook his head. "Let me worry about corporate. I'm going to fight for you on this one. And if they don't listen, then I'll walk out right beside you." Marcus was touched by the gesture. He had always seen Henderson as just a by-the-book bureaucrat. But tonight had revealed something deeper in the man. They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun begin to creep over the horizon. Finally, Henderson spoke again. "Can I ask you something? What made you open those doors?" "You knew what it would cost you." Marcus thought about the question. "When I was a cop," he said slowly, "I once responded to a domestic violence call too late. By the time we got there, the woman was already dead. Her neighbor had called us hours earlier, but we were short-staffed and it got classified as low priority. I've carried that guilt for years. When I saw Sarah tonight, bleeding and scared, I knew I couldn't live with myself if I just walked away. Some things are more important than a paycheck." Henderson nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Thank you for reminding me of that." As Marcus drove home that morning, he didn't know what the future held. He might lose his job, might struggle to pay his bills, might face consequences he couldn't predict. But for the first time in years, he felt like himself again. Not just a security guard following orders, but a protector. Someone who stood up when it mattered most. His phone rang as he pulled into his driveway. It was an unknown number, but Marcus answered it anyway. "Is this Marcus Williams?" A woman's voice asked, double quotes. "Yes, this is Marcus." This is Officer Chen from the police department. I wanted to let you know that Sarah Mitchell is out of surgery. The doctors say she's going to make a full recovery, thanks to you getting help when you did. She wanted me to call and let you know she's okay." Marcus felt tears well up in his eyes. "Thank you for telling me." After he hung up, Marcus sat in his car for a long moment, feeling the weight of the night finally lifting from his shoulders. Sarah was going to live. That was all that mattered. He didn't know then that this night would change far more than just his own life. 3 days after the incident, Marcus was called into a meeting at the mall's corporate office downtown. He dressed in his best shirt and tie, preparing himself for what he assumed would be his termination hearing. His mother had told him not to worry, that good things happen to good people, but Marcus knew how corporations worked. He had violated a direct order, and companies didn't usually forgive that. Regardless of the outcome, the corporate building was sleek and modern, all glass and steel. Marcus felt out of place as he rode the elevator to the 10th floor, where the regional management offices were located. A receptionist directed him to a conference room, and when he walked in, he was surprised by who was waiting. Mr. Henderson was there, along with 3 people Marcus didn't recognize. 2 were executives in expensive suits, and the third was a woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. She stood up immediately when Marcus entered. "Mr. Williams, thank you for coming," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Jennifer Carlson, the Vice President of Operations for the region. This is Thomas Drake, our legal counsel, and Patricia Morrison, our Human Resources Director." Marcus shook hands with everyone, his stomach tight with anxiety. This was clearly more serious than a simple firing. They were going to make an example of him. "Please sit down," Jennifer said, gesturing to a chair. "I'm sure you're wondering why you're here." "I assume it's about what happened Tuesday night," Marcus said, deciding to be direct. "I understand I violated company policy by engaging with someone outside the property. I'm prepared to accept whatever consequences you've decided." Jennifer exchanged glances with the other executives. "Mr. Williams, you're right that you violated policy. However, after reviewing the facts of the case and hearing Mr. Henderson's report, we've concluded that our policy in this situation was inadequate." Marcus blinked in surprise. "Excuse me?" Thomas Drake, the legal counsel, leaned forward. "The policy you violated was designed to protect the company from liability in situations where security personnel might overstep their authority or put themselves at unnecessary risk. However, it was never intended to prevent guards from rendering aid in life-threatening emergencies." Patricia Morrison added, "What you did Tuesday night was act with extraordinary courage and compassion in a situation that clearly constituted an emergency. The woman you helped, Sarah Mitchell, has been in contact with us. She credits you with saving her life." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. "She's really okay?" "She's recovering well," Jennifer said with a smile. "And she's not the only one who's been in contact with us. The story of what you did has been picked up by local news outlets. We've received hundreds of calls and emails praising your actions and frankly, criticizing our company for having policies that would discourage such heroism." She slid a folder across the table to Marcus. "This is a revised version of our security protocol. We're updating it across all our properties nationwide. The new policy explicitly authorizes security personnel to render aid in medical emergencies and situations involving imminent danger, regardless of property boundaries. We're calling it the Marcus Williams Protocol." Marcus opened the folder, stunned. The new policy was comprehensive, outlining clear procedures for when guards should intervene, how to assess emergencies, and what steps to take while maintaining safety. It was everything his old police training had taught him, now officially sanctioned by the company. "I don't know what to say," Marcus managed. "Say you'll stay on with us," Jennifer replied. "We're not firing you, Mr. Williams. We're promoting you. We want you to become our regional training coordinator. Your job would be to travel to our various properties and train security teams on the new protocols. You'd also be involved in continuing to refine our emergency response procedures." Marcus looked at Henderson, who was beaming. "I told you corporate would do the right thing," Henderson said. "The pay increase is substantial," Patricia added, sliding another document across the table. "And you'd have full benefits, including health coverage for you and your mother." Marcus stared at the salary figure on the paper. It was almost double what he currently made. With this money, he could finally afford the physical therapy his knee needed. He could make sure his mother had everything she required. He could stop worrying about making ends meet. There's one more thing, Jennifer said. This Saturday, the mayor is holding a ceremony at City Hall. They're giving you a commendation for your actions. Sarah Mitchell will be there, and she's asked if she could meet you properly. Marcus felt overwhelmed. Just days ago, he had been prepared to lose everything for doing what he thought was right. Now, his entire life was changing in ways he never imagined. I accept, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion, and thank you. All of you. But especially you, Mr. Henderson. You didn't have to support me the way you did. Henderson shook his head. You reminded me why we do this job in the first place. It's not about protecting property or following rules blindly. It's about being there when people need help. I should be thanking you. The meeting concluded with handshakes and congratulations. As Marcus left the building, he felt like he was walking on air. He called his mother immediately to share the news, and she cried tears of joy on the phone. Saturday arrived quickly. The ceremony at City Hall was attended by more people than Marcus expected. There were reporters, city officials, and dozens of community members who had heard his story and wanted to show their support. Marcus wore his best suit, feeling self-conscious about all the attention. The mayor gave a speech about courage and moral responsibility, about how Marcus had demonstrated the best qualities of their community. Then they called Marcus to the stage and presented him with a certificate of commendation and a medal for valor. But the moment that truly mattered came afterward. When the crowds had thinned, and Marcus was standing alone for a moment, he heard a quiet voice behind him, Mr. Williams. He turned to see Sarah Mitchell. She looked completely different from the terrified, bleeding woman he had found in the freezing cold. Her color had returned, her eyes were bright, and though she moved carefully, favoring her injured side, she was smiling. "What, Sarah?" Marcus said, instinctively moving to help steady her as she approached. "You shouldn't be out of bed yet." "The doctors cleared me for today," she assured him. "I couldn't miss this. I needed to thank you properly." "You don't need to thank me," Marcus started to say, but Sarah cut him off. "Yes, I do. You saved my life. But more than that, you showed me that there are still good people in the world. People who will help even when it costs them something. After everything with Jake, I had started to lose faith in people. You gave me that faith back." She hugged him carefully, mindful of her injuries. Marcus hugged her back, feeling the weight of that night finally lifting completely. "What are you going to do now?" Marcus asked when they separated. Sarah's smile grew wider. "I'm moving back to Ohio to be near my mom while I recover. I've also been in contact with a domestic violence advocacy group. They want me to share my story to help other women recognize the warning signs of abuse and find the courage to leave dangerous relationships. I figure if my terrible experience can help even one person, then something good came from it." "That's incredibly brave," Marcus said with genuine admiration. "I learn from the best," Sarah replied. Looking at him meaningfully, they talked for a while longer, exchanging phone numbers and promising to stay in touch. When Sarah finally left with her mother, who had flown in to support her, Marcus felt a profound sense of peace. He had spent years carrying guilt over the woman he hadn't been able to save as a police officer. Now, finally, he had saved someone when it truly mattered. The past didn't feel quite so heavy anymore, but Marcus's story wasn't finished yet. The ripples from that November night were spreading farther than anyone realized. 2 months after the incident, Marcus was settling into his new role as regional training coordinator. He had visited 12 different mall locations, training security teams on the new emergency response protocols. Every guard he met wanted to hear the story of that November night directly from him, and Marcus found himself becoming comfortable with public speaking, something that had always terrified him. But the most surprising development came in January, when he received a phone call from someone he never expected to hear from, Mr. Williams. "This is Detective Lisa Park from the District Attorney's Office. I'm calling about the Jake Morrison case." Marcus remembered Jake's last name from the police reports. "Yes, how can I help you?" "Jake Morrison's trial is scheduled for next month. We have a strong case with the physical evidence and witness statements, But Sarah Mitchell is terrified of testifying. She's worried that seeing Jake again will traumatize her, and honestly, after what she's been through, I understand her fear. However, your testimony will be crucial. Would you be willing to testify about what you witnessed? Of course, Marcus said, without hesitation. Whatever Sarah needs, there's something else, Detective Park continued. Sarah's case has gotten significant attention, and it's opened up something we've been seeing for a while. Jake Morrison wasn't a first-time offender. We've discovered he had 2 previous girlfriends who also experienced abuse but were too scared to press charges. Now, with Sarah's case and the publicity around what you did, both of those women have come forward. They want to testify too. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. 2 other women? Yes. One of them, Christina Davis, read about Sarah's story in the newspaper. She recognized Jake's name and contacted us. That led us to another woman, Rebecca Torres. Both of them have similar stories of escalating control, threats, and violence. If we can get convictions on all charges, Jake Morrison will be facing serious prison time. But all of this only happened because you refused to look the way and Sarah survived to tell her story. After the call ended, Marcus sat quietly in his new office, processing this information. The decision he made that night hadn't just saved one life. It had potentially protected future victims and given voice to women who had been suffering in silence. A week later, Marcus received another unexpected call, this time from a television producer named Rachel Chen. Mr. Williams, I work for a national news program and we're doing a segment on everyday heroes. We'd love to feature your story. We want to talk about what you did, but also about the broader issue of how corporate policies sometimes conflict with human compassion. Would you be interested? Marcus was hesitant. He had never sought attention for what happened. But then he thought about what Sarah had said about using her experience to help others. Maybe his story could do the same. Will this help other people in similar situations? Marcus asked. Absolutely, Rachel assured him. We want to discuss how security personnel, store employees, and everyday citizens can recognize domestic violence situations and know when to intervene. Your actions provide a perfect example of moral courage in action. Marcus agreed to the interview. The filming took place at Riverside Mall, right where everything had happened. Standing in that same spot, looking at the west entrance doors he had pushed open that freezing night, Marcus told his story to a national audience. The segment aired 3 weeks later. Marcus watched it at home with his mother, feeling embarrassed by all the praise but grateful that the message was getting out. The show included interviews with domestic violence experts who used his story to educate viewers about warning, signs of abuse, and the importance of intervention. What Marcus didn't expect was the flood of responses that followed. The television station gave him permission to share his email address, and within days he received hundreds of messages. Many were from domestic violence survivors, thanking him for helping Sarah and raising awareness. But others were from security guards, store clerks, and ordinary citizens who had faced similar dilemmas about whether to help someone in need. One email particularly moved him. It was from a young security guard named David in Oregon. Mr. Williams, I watched your interview last night and I need to tell you what happened today. I work at a shopping center, and this afternoon I saw a teenager who looked distressed near the parking lot. Our policy says to stay at our posts unless there's a direct threat to property. But I remembered your story. I went to check on him, and it turned out he was having a diabetic emergency. I called an ambulance, and the paramedic said if I had waited even 10 more minutes, he might have died. You showed me that some rules are meant to be broken when lives are at stake. Thank you, Marcus replied, to every email he received, offering encouragement and support. He began to realize that his story had become bigger than just one night at a mall. It had become a conversation about the balance between following rules and following conscience, about when compassion should override policy. In February, Marcus attended Jake Morrison's trial. The courtroom was packed with supporters for Sarah and the other victims. Marcus took the stand and described everything he had witnessed that night. He looked directly at Jake as he testified, seeing none of the rage that had filled the man's eyes in the parking lot. Jake looked smaller now, defeated and hollow. Sarah testified too, and Marcus sat in the gallery to support her. Her voice shook at times, but she never wavered in her account. She described the escalating abuse the night Jake stabbed her and her desperate attempt to escape. When she finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Christina and Rebecca also testified, their stories painting a disturbing pattern of behavior. Jake's defense attorney tried to discredit them, suggesting they were coordinating their stories, but the consistency of their independent accounts only strengthened the prosecution's case. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. When they returned, the verdict was guilty on all counts, including aggravated assault, stalking, and making terroristic threats. Jake Morrison was sentenced to 15 years in prison, with no possibility of parole for at least 10 years. After the sentencing, Sarah found Marcus in the courthouse hallway. She was crying, but this time they were tears of relief. "It's really over," she said, hugging him tightly. "I can finally move forward with my life." "You were incredibly strong in there," Marcus told her. "I'm proud of you." "I couldn't have done any of this without you," Sarah said. "You gave me a second chance at life, and I'm not going to waste it." Over the following weeks, Marcus noticed changes in his own life that went beyond his new job. He felt more connected to his community, more purposeful in his daily activities. The guilt he had carried for years about the woman he couldn't save had finally loosened its grip. He understood now that you couldn't save everyone. But that didn't mean you stopped trying. In March, Marcus received an invitation that surprised him more than anything else. It was from the National Association of Security Professionals, asking him to be the keynote speaker at their annual conference. They wanted him to talk about ethical decision-making and emergency response in security work. Marcus called Sarah to tell her about it. As they had stayed in regular contact, she had returned to Ohio and was thriving in her new role with the domestic violence advocacy group. "You have to accept," Sarah insisted. "Your story needs to be heard by as many people as possible." "I'm not a public speaker," Marcus protested. "I'm just a security guard who did what anyone should do." "That's exactly why you need to speak," Sarah countered. "Because you see it as something anyone should do, but the reality is that most people don't. They look the other way. They follow orders blindly. They prioritize their own comfort over someone else's crisis. You showed that there's another way, and people need to hear that from you." Marcus accepted the invitation. Standing on that conference stage in front of hundreds of security professionals, he told his story once more. But this time, he also talked about the police officer he used to be, the guilt he had carried, and how one decision to break the rules had not only saved a life, but it also redeemed his own sense of purpose. "We take these jobs to protect people," Marcus told the audience. "Not just property, not just profits, but actual human beings. And sometimes, protecting people means making hard choices that go against our training or our company policies. I'm not saying we should ignore all rules. Rules exist for good reasons. But I am saying that we need to remember why we wear these uniforms in the first place. We're here to help, to serve, to stand between danger and the innocent. And when that moment comes when you have to choose between following an order and following your conscience, I hope you'll have the courage to do what's right." The speech received a standing ovation. Afterward, dozens of security professionals came up to share their own stories of times they had faced similar dilemmas. Marcus listened to each one, offering encouragement and understanding. That conference marked another turning point. Marcus was asked to consult with other security companies about updating their policies. He worked with legal teams and human resources departments to create protocols that balanced liability, concerns with moral responsibility. The work was challenging but deeply fulfilling. By the time summer arrived, Marcus had become something of an accidental advocate for policy reform in the security industry. Several major companies had adopted versions of the Marcus Williams Protocol, and training programs across the country were using his story as a case study in ethical decision-making. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came in June, when Marcus received a letter from Christina Davis, one of Jake Morrison's previous victims, who had testified at the trial. The letter read, "Dear Mr. Williams, you don't know me well, but I want you to know that your courage gave me courage. For 3 years I lived with shame about what Jake did to me, believing somehow that I deserved it or that I was too weak to stop it. Watching you risk everything to save Sarah made me realize that I wasn't weak for being victimized. I was strong for surviving. Because of your example and Sarah's bravery in pressing charges, I've started therapy and joined a support group. I'm reclaiming my life. Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like." Marcus kept that letter in his desk drawer. On difficult days, when the weight of his responsibilities felt heavy, he would read it and remember why all of this mattered. His simple act of opening a door on a freezing November night had created a ripple effect that continued to spread, touching lives in ways he could never have predicted. And the story was far from over. 1 year after that fateful November night, Marcus stood once again at the west entrance of Riverside Mall. The shopping center had planned a special ceremony to mark the anniversary, though Marcus had tried to convince them it wasn't necessary. But Mr. Henderson, who had become a close friend, insisted that marking the occasion was important. The mall had installed a small plaque near the entrance that read, "In recognition of the courage and compassion demonstrated here, may we always remember that humanity matters more than policy." It was subtle, not drawing attention to Marcus specifically, but honoring the principle that his actions had represented. Sarah had flown in from Ohio for the ceremony, along with her mother. She looked completely different from the frightened woman Marcus had found bleeding in the cold. Her eyes sparkled with life and purpose. She had cut her hair short and wore it with confidence. Most importantly, she smiled easily now, something Marcus learned she rarely did during her time with Jake. "I have something to tell you," Sarah said, as they stood together before the ceremony began. "I've been accepted into graduate school. I'm going to become a counselor specializing in trauma and domestic violence recovery. I want to help others the way people helped me." Marcus felt his eyes water. "Sarah, that's wonderful. You're going to change so many lives." "I learned from you that one person really can make a difference," she replied. "You didn't just save my life that night. You showed me what it means to choose compassion over convenience, courage over comfort. That lesson changed everything for me." The ceremony was small and intimate, attended by mall employees, local police officers, and community members who had followed the story. The police chief presented Marcus with another commendation, and Sarah spoke about the importance of intervention in domestic violence situations. But the most unexpected moment came when a teenage girl approached Marcus after the ceremony ended. She was about 16, nervous and fidgeting with her hands. "Mr. Williams, can I talk to you for a minute?" "Of course," Marcus said gently. Recognizing the signs of someone carrying a heavy burden, the girl glanced at her mother, who stood nearby and nodded encouragingly. "My name is Emma. I saw you on TV talking about what you did for Sarah, and I need to tell you something. My friend Ashley, she has a boyfriend who scares me. He controls who she talks to, checks her phone constantly, and I've seen bruises on her arms that she tries to hide." Marcus felt his protective instincts surge. "Have you talked to your parents about this?" Emma nodded. "My mom and I have tried to talk to Ashley, but she says we're overreacting, that her boyfriend just cares about her. But after hearing your story and Sarah's, I realize those are warning signs. I don't want to wait until something terrible happens. What should I do?" Marcus knelt down to be at eye level with Emma. "You're being an incredible friend by recognizing this and wanting to help. Let me give you some resources." He pulled out his phone and shared contact information for local domestic violence organizations, as well as school counselors who specialized in teen relationships. "The most important thing," Marcus continued, "is to let Ashley know that you're there for her, no matter what. Don't judge her for staying with him. Just remind her that she deserves to be treated with respect and that you'll help her when she's ready to leave. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is stand by someone until they find their own courage." Emma's mother stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Williams. We've been so worried, but we didn't know how to help. This means everything." After they left, Sarah touched Marcus's arm. "You're still saving lives," she observed. "Just in different ways now." The evening concluded with refreshments in the mall food court. Marcus found himself surrounded by people sharing their own stories, asking for advice, or simply wanting to express gratitude for raising awareness about an issue that affected so many lives. Mr. Henderson pulled Marcus aside during a quiet moment. "I have news," he said, Corporate has decided to establish an annual award in your name. The Marcus Williams Humanitarian Award will be given each year to a security professional who demonstrates extraordinary compassion and moral courage. The first recipient will be announced next month. Marcus was speechless. A year ago, he had been prepared to lose his job for defying orders. Now his name was being used to inspire others in the security profession. "I don't know what to say," Marcus finally managed. Henderson smiled. "You don't have to say anything. Just keep being the person you are. That's enough." As the evening wound down and people began to leave, Marcus stood alone for a moment at the west entrance, looking out at the parking lot where everything had changed. The temperature had dropped, reminding him of that freezing November night. But this time, the cold didn't feel quite so bitter. His phone buzzed with a text message. It was from David, a young security guard from Oregon who had emailed him months ago about helping the diabetic teenager. The message read, "Mr. Williams, I wanted you to know that I've been promoted to training supervisor at my company. My first initiative is implementing protocols similar to yours. The kid I helped and his family came to visit me today to say thank you. He's doing great. None of this would have happened if you hadn't shown me what courage looks like. Thank you for changing my life." Marcus smiled and typed back a reply. "You changed your own life by choosing to act. That's all any of us can do. Proud of you." More messages came in throughout the evening. Christina sent a photo of herself graduating from college, something she said she'd never thought she'd have the strength to do after her experience with Jake. Rebecca shared news that she had started a support group for abuse survivors in her community. Former colleagues from his police days reached out to say his story had reminded them why they became officers in the first place. Each message represented another life touched, another ripple spreading outward from that single decision to open a door. Marcus drove home that night feeling profoundly grateful. His mother was still awake when he arrived, waiting to hear about the ceremony. "How did it go?" she asked, handing him a cup of tea. "It was perfect, Mom," Marcus said, settling into his favorite chair. "But you know what struck me most? All these people thanking me for being brave, but I don't feel like I did anything extraordinary. I just did what felt right in that moment." His mother smiled wisely. "That's what real courage is, sweetheart. It's not about grand gestures or seeking glory. It's about making the right choice when it's difficult, even when no one would blame you for walking away. You've always had that kind of courage. That night at the mall just gave the world a chance to see what I've always known about you." Marcus thought about her words as he got ready for bed. He thought about Sarah rebuilding her life, about Christina and Rebecca finding their voices, about Emma trying to help her friend, about David becoming a leader in his field. He thought about all the security guards who had reached out to tell him they felt empowered to trust their instincts now. One decision, made in a moment of moral clarity, had created a cascade of positive change that continued to grow. But Marcus understood now that it wasn't just his decision that mattered. It was everyone who heard the story and chose to apply its lessons in their own lives. Each of them became part of the ripple, carrying the message forward, as Marcus finally drifted off to sleep. He thought about something Sarah had said during her speech at the ceremony. "We all face moments when we have to choose between doing what's easy and doing what's right." Marcus showed us that choosing right, even when it costs us something, is how we become our best selves. His courage didn't just save my life. It reminded all of us that we have the power to be heroes in ordinary moments. Outside, snow began to fall gently on the quiet street, covering everything in a blanket of white. It was November again, exactly 1 year since that night. But this time, instead of representing fear and violence, the cold reminded Marcus of transformation and hope. The guard who couldn't ignore a cry for help had become more than just a security professional. He had become a symbol of what it means to choose humanity over hierarchy, compassion over compliance, and courage over comfort. And somewhere in the world, another person facing a similar choice would remember his story and find the strength to do what was right. The ripples continued to spread, reaching farther than anyone could measure, proving that one moment of courage could indeed change the world, one life at a time.